Enjoying life at the moment, learning some cooking from my wife, driving a lot, traveling a lot, reading a lot. In fact, the
Nice.
aim was to read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit before I watched the movies. When you are selling to HR folks, you should understand that in the end, they are also part of an organization, and an organization is in the business of doing business or in the business of making money, right?
Hey Himanshu, welcome to the Curious Show. How are you doing, man?
Thank you for having me here, Ranaq. I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
Good, good, all good. Which I see you're all tucked up. Which part of India are you in?
I am in my hometown right now, Ranaq. It's in Himachal Pradesh, a town called Dharamshala.
Nice, nice. Cool, Himanshu. See, you and I know each other for a long, long time. But for everyone listening in, before we dive in, why don't you just talk a little bit about Himanshu? Who is Himanshu, and what is Himanshu up to now?
Great. First of all, I'll answer the last question. Himanshu right now is on a break, enjoying life at the moment, learning some cooking from my wife, driving a lot, traveling a lot, reading a lot. In fact, the
Nice.
aim was to read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit before I watched the movies. Happy to say I finished that as of last week. Looking forward to the movies now. Before that, I spent 4.5 years at
That's
Darwinbox.
got to be a great one. If
Yeah,
you're
I
watching
hope
Lord of
so.
the Rings for the first time, damn.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But it's after reading the book, so I just hope the movies are as good as the books were. The
It
books
is.
were fantastic. Yeah,
It is. Thoda nuance here and there, but yeah, it's just as good.
great. We'll see them. I think I'll finish them this week then. I was with Darwinbox for the past 4.5 years, where in fact we first interacted back in 2019. So spent around 4.5 years over there doing enterprise sales. Sold the HR Tech or the HMRMS platform of Darwinbox to companies ranging from 200 in headcount to 15,000 in headcount over time. Uh, Before that, Darwinbox, I would say, was my first real job. Before that, spent some time at another B2B tech startup. And before that, first job was with Nestlé and FMCG, where I spent close to a year. Lawyer by graduation, have never practiced law, so it's only a fancy degree that I have. Went for an MBA immediately after that, and that has been the journey so far. A native of Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh, uh, spent all my life till class 12th till here, and then been out of the city since then. And always find time to come back here as often as possible.
Of course, I'm sure. Thanks for sharing. And there's a lot of interesting things you just said, as if they're not interesting, which is from lawyer to
Yeah.
now you're in enterprise sales. And but let me first come back on. You're on a career break now, but uh, it just sounds. I mean, I know it's an aspiration for a lot of people, and I think it's important also. But do you want to talk a little bit about that? That what led you to this? Because I know a lot of people who feel like, hey, I'm burnt out, I need to take a break, but they don't have the courage to take the break.
Hmm.
Is there some steps and actions that led you to this, and how are you planning this out?
And
Hi, everyone. Sorry that I'm interrupting the show, but first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your time out and listening to the pod. I hope that you're getting some value from the conversations that we have. Now, I have one request from everyone listening in. It will be really, really helpful for me if you can just go ahead and click a subscribe. I did an analysis and it appears that 95% of the people who listen to the show don't hit a subscribe. Now, the thing is, if I don't get those subscriber numbers, it's going to be pretty unsustainable to be doing this show for a long time. And the idea of this is not fame, popularity, but it's just to get the word and the message across to as many people as we possibly can. Right. So, can we have sort of like a gentleman and a ladies' agreement between us where if you've got any value from the show, you want to support me putting out more people related content and interesting conversations in the people space, please take a minute out and hit the subscribe button. I'll really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And back to the show.
understood. Understood, Ramek. See, when you talk about a break, right, I hadn't envisioned it immediately as a break. So back, let's say in September. So I moved out of Darwinbox around December. Back when in September or let's say August, I was thinking that, hey, I'll put down my resignation and I'll figure out what I want to do next. I realized, basis the interaction I'd had with my friends, what I get to see on LinkedIn, what has been happening in the community, that hey, maybe these days a career break is not looked in such a bad manner that it maybe used to be looked at 10 years ago, at least in India, other countries I'm not aware of. There are people in my network who have had a break for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then gone on to restart their careers. Couple of things I was very aware about is that I cannot link this break and a change in job to just a increase in my salary or increase in my earnings overall. What I figured is that, hey, a career is a long game. It is going to be 25, 30 years maybe. This is maybe like a small blip. The idea is to rejuvenate yourselves. I wouldn't say I was burnt out. I was just got bored doing the same thing for 4.5 years. The idea was to rejuvenate myself. Doing that with another job would have been difficult. When I join the next job, or when I get into the market for a job search again, I may not get the best X% of hike as people envision it, that, hey, I want a 20, 30, 40%. But that was never my aim. The aim was that rejuvenate myself and then figure out an opportunity that works for you. In terms of salary, I think I'm at that level. I have that confidence in my skills that I'll get something which will help me take care of my daily necessities and plus leave something for luxury. As long as you're okay with that and you're not in the race that, hey, my friend has bought a car, he has bought a house, he's going on a trip to Italy, I should also do the same, you should be mostly fine. That's how I thought about it. Another factor would be you have a partner, a wife, a spouse, or a partner who earns well themselves. So they can take care of any of the recurring payments which are going to happen. Could be a car EMI, could be a house EMI, could be anything else. So both of the things worked out in my case, and hence I took this decision.
Great, and I think that's the point. Like people, what they do is they club both. Right? That yeah, I want to change, I want to regenerate myself, but I know that this is my last 3 months in the company, so I'm going to work as well as do that. I think that doesn't work. But great, you found the courage to do it, and you have everything in order. But and how are you going about the next, like just quick actionables for people who probably do this because they're scared that in my next role, right, when I go for the interviews, how I'm going to explain this break. How have you thought of that?
To be honest, I haven't run if I'll put it that way. I am sort of an impulsive person where if I think a decision feels right to me in my head or in my gut for that matter, I go ahead with the decision as long as it is not hurting anyone. I'll probably be honest about it even when I enter with another company that I just wanted a break. I don't think a 3, 4, 5, 6 month break puts a dent in any of my skills. I don't think that reduces in any way the value I might give to you when you hire me, and I think that's going to be about it. That's going what I'm going to be honest about. Some may not like it, some may not prefer me because of that. Okay, that's their problem, their loss of talent. I am assuming the world is big enough that I'll find someone who will not have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, anecdotally, just this is a conversation I was having with a bunch of my HR peers, and everyone is okay with that. In fact, we are looking forward to it in the sense it's a more interesting conversation to somebody who's actually taken a break and done something, as you said, uh, discovered themselves, read something, you just basically come out better on the other side. And again, people who've been honest, I think is the right way to go. In fact, we are hiring someone very senior who was just on a break for 3 4 months, and the point is we never even looked at it, never even came up.
Yeah.
Towards the end we are like, hey, you were on a break. What were you doing? Just traveling and all of that. So cool. Now coming back to interesting point number one that you started, lawyer by profession, never practiced, ended up in sales. How and why did that happen, like that whole career transition?
So, okay, a couple. So I think it was a series of different decisions. Some of them happened by chance. Some of them were conscious decisions. If I go back in the story, so let's say if I go back to class 12th, standard normal middle class guy, like household guy, like ठीक है non medical ले रखा है. What are the options you have, right? You have to do something which gets you into a job which pays you decent money, right? Engineering would have been the standard option. I also prepared for it. There are no lawyers in my family. My entire family is made of doctors and teachers. In fact, there are no engineers in the family also. I didn't want to be a doctor because I've seen my dad and he studies so much even at the age of 65 as like, mere se I can't do this. It's too much of study to keep yourself abreast with what's happening in medicine. So it was like an elimination sort of a thing. But then my mother somehow suggested me that why don't you give this exam to, it's called CLAT or CLAT. It's a common law admission test to get into one of the top law colleges in India. You like debating, you like talking, you like writing, you like reading. These are the sort of competencies which would come in handy if you want to be a lawyer tomorrow, right? I was like, hey, okay, let's give it a try. Not bad. Prepared some bit for it, ended up getting I think somewhere a 400 or a 450 rank all India, got into one of the top 5 ranked colleges in India, spent 5 years over there. During the third or the fourth year realized that, hey, this is something I find very interesting, but if I have to look at it as a profession, probably not the best thing for me, and I'll tell you the reasons why. when you finish a law degree, you're left with a couple of options, right? You could practice in a high court or a junior court, which is called as litigation. The problem with litigation is you will not start making money till the seventh or the eighth year of your practice. It's a grind. Senior advocates or lawyers will exploit you in the name of training that, hey, we'll pay you 15K a month, just cover your living expenses. Rest, you are gaining experience, right? Which you'll use to earn money later. Ruled out that option. Judiciary is another thing. A lot of my batchmates are into. A lot of them are judges at present in district level courts or senior courts. However, that puts a big curtain on your social life. You have to be very prim and proper in your behavior. You can't do a lot of things which you'd want to do otherwise as a private individual. Rule that out. I'm an extrovert. I like meeting people all the time. Option number three, which lets you practice law and lets you make money, is you get into a law firm, a corporate advisory sort of a law firm. The problem there is, and some hate me for saying this, is the culture is unilaterally very bad. It depends on your partner. I have seen my wife being woken up at 1 in the night that, hey, this draft is ready. Why don't you review it? Why don't you send it to the client? I'm like, boss, take money is one side of it. I can't just be made a slave for that money, right? At that point in time, my current wife, my then girlfriend, she suggested that, hey, this, like, I haven't seen a lot of lawyers doing an MBA, but the sort of person you are, I think you'd have a knack for business. Why don't you try it out? So I was like, hey, let me at least prepare for the exams and write it. Uh, let's see where it takes me. And to be honest, I was fairly interested in labor and industrial relations. I wanted to do an MBA in HR. The dream colleges were XLRI and TIS. Fortunately, unfortunately, while I did get through them, I also got through IIM Ahmedabad, after which no one let me choose a TIS or an XLRI over IMA. Again, at IMA, you do not have any scope for HR. The courses are barely any, and you don't really get many options for getting into an HR role. Figured out I had two tracks which I would like to follow: sales and marketing or consulting, which appealed to me. Consulting, the problem would have been same again as that of a law firm, that of being no work-life balance,
Right.
long hours, very partner-dependent culture. Uh, Tried out, let's look at marketing and sales, and then let's figure out where it takes me. Got an internship with Nestle, worked out very well, got a PPO, joined there, worked for a year. Uh, Realized after working for a year, I do not like desk jobs. I like jobs where I talk to more and more people. I can set my own calendar. Unlike FMCG, there shouldn't be a daily grind, a weekly or a monthly grind of numbers, targets. And my earlier love for HR somehow led me drifting to the company which I last worked in, which was Darwinbox. Again, I would say it was fate. I was looking for a job change. One of our alums, my first boss, Nikhil, he had dropped a mail on the alum group that, hey, we are looking for a person who would be open to doing B2B sales. Applied, got through, and yeah, that's that. So, sort of a, I would say, long story, but a lot of it happened by chance, by elimination, by just thinking. And I think that also comes from being comfortable that, see, you can keep thinking about the future, what will happen, what will happen, what will happen, but even in the short term a decision seems good. I would say 80% it has worked out for me so far. I've been lucky, I've been guided by some nice people, but it has worked out for me so far.
Interesting. Interesting. It's interesting how much luck and serendipity plays a part in all of this. Like, same for me. I mean, I've had a transition, and if somebody asks me, I say, man, there's just luck and serendipity. I didn't really have a grand scheme.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting point. A lot of people, I would say, I mean, I'm using the word mistake, but would life have been better if, let's say, the path you are at, path I'm at, and a path a lot of people eventually end up at, they could have figured it out on day zero? So you would have got 6 7 years of extra experience. Don't know, but
I don't know, but I'm also, I think, sort of comfortable in not knowing that. Matlab, it's okay, I have this much of brain power. I can't spend it on thinking कि ऐसा होता कैसा होता ठीक है. We anyway do that subconsciously all the time, right? If this had happened or if we could do this, I wouldn't want to push it beyond the limit.
yeah, but is there like a way people figure this out very early? So there are people who are in their 20s and 21s, at least, and I'm just riffing off what I've heard, and people have come up to me and said, "Hey, I'm just fresh out of college, not sure what to do." Have you seen, or would you go back and if you were 2021, would you have changed anything?
I think the only one thing I said, I should have chosen TIS or XLRI over IIM Ahmedabad. For sure, I would have been probably maybe a little more. So, see, people have not a great image of HR in terms of what they do and how stressful, etc., their job is. I find it very interesting. I've sold to HRs for 4+ years. And that is one decision. That I think that is the sole decision if I could have changed. But then probably life would have been 10 or 20% better. It wouldn't have been a material difference.
Yeah, I think just doing, like, just, if you just take experience, and just keep doing, you'll figure it out. At least that's what I tell people. Just whatever you want to do, just do. You'll figure it out by doing
Correct.
versus not doing. Um, cool. Again, I wanted to double click a little bit more on this. You've clearly found, what you are good at, right? What you enjoy doing, which is selling. We'll come to that later. But is there a way to find, people? If you are giving, let's say, anecdotal advice, how do people really find what they are good at and what they love to do?
See, most people I've seen, and in my case also, it takes a couple of tries. That's all I'll put at. There are probably, if I put it in terms of career or work-wise, there are probably three, four broad buckets, and you can try them out in your initial couple of years, or you can even try it out maybe later. I don't know. That's a slight bit to do with the cultural nuances of it. Also, in India, maybe it gets difficult to try things out once you get into senior positions. I have a friend in the Netherlands who has been a salesperson for 7, 8 years, who's been in the police for another 8 years, and I think he's right now in some climate tech company doing the tech part of it. It is not so easy to do it in our country, but in the initial few years, I think there are three, four broad buckets which anyone can try and then figure out what they're good at.
Yeah, again, same answer. Like, just try and you'll
Correct.
figure it out.
Try,
Yeah.
do it, and then only you'll figure out. It doesn't work. Big deal.
Cool. Shifting gears to what you're doing now, like selling, right? We'll get into HR specific stuff later because I'm very curious about that, right? How do you sell to HRs? Because it's clearly a big market now and a market which will pick up. But broadly, right, in your experience, you've sold to tech companies, right?
Yeah.
B2B, B2B sales, you sold to multiple companies. Like, how does somebody who's figured out, let's say I'm good at sales, right, but I don't want to go on the road and sell, let's say a shampoo. I want to sell b2b software. How does somebody build a career in tech sales? Can be broad tech sales, can be any industry.
See, most places you'll see it starts off at joining at a junior level. In my case, I was fortunate enough that I joined at a slightly above a junior level. See, when you break down sales at a very basic principle, it is like finding someone who might have a need for your product, showing them or showcasing to them how do you solve for that need, and see that building that trust that hey, I can fulfill that need while being trustworthy. I'll not like abandon you at a later stage. The most difficult part is finding that person. It used to be like people cold calling or even walking from door to door, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago. These days it is much easier. You can build a small community on LinkedIn. There are so many events which happen all around the country, all around the globe you can work in. There are a lot of software which let you see what sort of people are intending to buy what. You can reach out to them, but in the end it boils down to the step one, which is you should be effective at reach out. If This is something, see, cold calling is something which is very difficult for anyone and everyone. Even I hate it, though I've done it at times. You should be able to reach out to someone and hold their attention, even if it is for 30 seconds. That is where the basic of sales starts from. When you say build, if you're looking to build a career in enterprise sales, I think the first step would be uh, to get into a role where you're doing that. It's called an SDR in common parlance, or a sales development representative. That is where most people start at. While I didn't directly start there, a lot of my job in the initial months was also involved cold reach outs. You can't avoid that. And once you become comfortable with that, I think rest of the path just follows. But that is the first step. The rest of the things come after that. That is how I would say you would like look to start a career in any sort of tech sales. And that is why most companies also, you head HR for your company. Even if you're hiring tomorrow, most of the companies will hire people for such roles only. This is like on the job training. You cannot have a better on the job training for this.
But is there anything specific for sales, like what are the competencies and characteristics you think that somebody
Okay.
should have?
Uh, See, while people say you should have certain characteristics and competencies, being empathetic, being a good listener, being good at building relationships would be a few I would list down. There are also a lot of process to it, especially when it comes to B2B. I have seen both sides of the spectrum. I am myself a relationship based seller. I'm less of a process based seller, but I've seen process based sellers also being very successful. So there have been people along with me in Darwinbox, I'll not take names obviously, who were the worst when it came to building relationships, but they were the best when it came to following processes, and they were successful enough. I wouldn't put it at I think the only base competency is when I'm selling to someone, that person should feel that they can trust me. As simple as that. I
Interesting. And what do
shouldn't
you?
come across as someone who's trying to make a quick buck. I shouldn't come across as someone who's trying to palm off something which is not beneficial to them. Trust is the basic thing. Apart from that, you can learn a lot of things, you can build a lot of processes, all that comes along the way.
And this relationship that you're building, is it genuine or is it fake? Like, are
It's
you doing it
genuine.
just for the
It
sake?
better be genuine. It better be genuine. So I'll give you an example. Uh, Even when I'm talking to someone I'm not selling to, in general, it always helps to be curious about people, right? What did people love talking about themselves, right? If I'm talking to
Yeah.
today, where are you from? What school did you go to? How many kids do you have? What do those kids do? All those things matter. So I remember, and I never managed to sell to that lady because I think the deal never advanced into different stages. But my wife still makes fun of me. So I always used to speak to that lady, and like her son's name was Virat, and he used to be good at cricket. It's like Virat ki classes kaisi chal rahi hai, and that was out of a genuine curiosity. I didn't care whether that will result in a sale or not. And she still makes fun of me कि विराट की मम्मी से बात नहीं बहुत दिन हो गए. So that should come genuinely, and that is how you build relationships with people. I'll just put it that way.
And so, as opposed to someone who's a process seller, how do they do it?
They don't do it, but they follow the process so very well that the relationship part maybe doesn't matter beyond a point, and the minor thing which should matter, they are able to fake it, is what they've seen. I would still lean on
Interesting.
the relationship part because process and all is fine. But yeah, I personally am a believer of the relationship angle of selling things because it takes, in the long term, it is a better thing.
But
That
isn't
person will
that the
remember you when they go to the next talk, to the next gig, and they'll remember Himanshu and may not remember Darwinbox, and that's how it should work.
so again, because getting a little tactical, because I have experience in the field. See, with tech sales, the problem is, I won't say problem, when you're genuinely pro the client, right? You want what's best for them. Sometimes it might so happen that you're trying to do what's best for them, but the tech side of things doesn't support that, right? Then, and that's always an established problem across industries, right? How does someone navigate that, essentially?
You don't navigate that, you try to mitigate it. One starts from setting the basic expectations. Clients may not be the brightest tech people, right? They may be the brightest in HR or something else. They're like, aajkal AI chal raha hai, I want AI. What do you want in AI? They have no idea. They just want things to be automated or whatever, blah blah. Starts from setting the right expectations. uh, Starts from or moves to, helping your organization fulfill those expectations by not moving away once the sale is done. I think we worked on a project long back for a client wherein, you remember, I had to be involved all throughout the implementation, right? Because there was so much difference in expectations. And see if your tech team also messes up at times, uh, making the client feel that, hey, while you are facing certain problems, we are here, we are working on them, we are trying to mitigate them. And again, not dissiperating it or blaming it on tech ki, "theek hai, it is not working out, it is not working out, what can we do?" Starts from expectations, helping the client, manage them mutually with your team, and then being there if anything goes wrong. That's pretty much it. So one thing which I follow very, very strongly in sales is make no false promises. If you lose a sale, it's okay. Do not make a false promise. It will come to bite you in the back 1, 2, 3 years down the line, and then it will be very difficult for you.
And then whatever you said, does it hold good for like the when you're making a sale to HRs, because that's what typically you've
Yes.
been doing, or is
I
there any
would
other
say it
nuance?
holds good in 90% of the cases. You'll find difficult people everywhere. That 10% will not understand something. Could be on your side, could be on the client side. They'll never be reasonable, but you can't do anything about it. I think that is the slight amount of stress which comes with any job, and you should be at peace with it. But most people are reasonable. They're understanding if you explain something to them logically. Why is something not happening? Or in the end, you want a business impact, right? How you can do it another way. This is something, again, which we used to face very commonly. That you can tweak this process maybe a little bit, you'll still get the same or a better impact. All those things, they're part and parcel of how you implement a project. Then.
This is something that people don't get, and I'm using this as a segue to come to selling to HRs, is
Yeah,
HR tech softwares, let's say, affect, unlike most softwares, affects the entire organization.
correct.
And I think that's a big reason why I think people say HR selling to HR is tough, or they are hedged, they are guarded. Just the exposure is so huge.
Yeah.
So uh, how do you sell to the HR community? How do you sell to HRs? How do you go about the whole process?
See, when you are selling to HR folks, you should understand that in the end, they are also part of an organization, and an organization is in the business of doing business or in the business of making money, right? So, as long as you have that sort of an, as long as you have something which you can show to them that, hey, I am solving this XYZ need, which can tomorrow have a better business impact or a positive business impact for an organization, I haven't found it to be very honest. Very tough to sell to HRs. So if I'm selling a solution which helps you with recruitment, one of the biggest pains in recruitment is turnaround time or offer dropouts post you've made an offer. If you can impact them positively and your product is able to do that, and you convey the same to your buyer or the HR folks, and you're doing it within their budget or without increasing their costs a lot, I haven't found that much difficulty in selling to HRs. I think the perception that selling to HRs is difficult uh, is not entirely correct. The difficulty stems from the fact that most times they do not hold the budget. They have to get it approved from their IT, the CIO, or the CFO, wherein your ability to make the HR your secondary seller, wherein they are going and convincing their business teams that, hey, why this is required and why this makes a business impact, becomes more important. So the challenge actually came from the fact where you also have to make your HR buyers your champions to sell internally. That was the more challenging part, but again, that is something which can be figured out with time. But it is not difficult to sell to HRs. I wouldn't completely agree with that.
Yeah, but that's an important point you made, Eventually, let's like dig a little deeper into this. You're right. Like the budgets, while some companies allocate some budgets, and if you're
Yeah.
pretty much using in that budget, then the approvals don't come in. But when you're saying you're selling a very large, let's say an HRMS, right, which is
Yeah.
costly, which is always going to be over and above the budget.
Yeah.
How do you do that, right? Because the budget is not with you. You have to take approval from one. There's IT, there's finance, there's CEO. How does a salesperson get involved and help in that process?
No, so that is where you understand their organization's process, how the decisions are made internally. Does the board get involved? Does it happen at the CEO level? Who gives the budget? IT, I've seen in bigger organizations, IT could become either an enabler or a roadblocker and works either ways 50-50% of the times. Then you figure out that process and then you help them navigate it. At times, considering especially selling an HRMS, it's a long drawn process. It could go anywhere from, I think, 4 months at the minimum to probably even I've closed a deal after 18 months also. You just don't have to give up. You have to be relentless. You don't have to be pushy, but you just have to keep that fire going and going and going and keep adding that fuel, right? You had a new release, product release, which added some new fancy features to the product, which could make it, better to present in front of the CEO. You prepare them that, hey, this has happened. These are the updates. Why don't you go present it to the CEO? If you're not confident, why don't you get me some FaceTime in front of the CFO or the CEO or whoever it is? You just have to be at it. It sounds very simple, but that is what I've seen everyone doing. You just have to understand the process of the organization you're selling to and just navigate that process.
And
And
is
these
it is it
processes can get very, very, very complicated, is what I've seen.
And is it like the processes that you said, just a play on like the size and scale of the
Yes,
organization?
yes, yes. Bigger the size of the organization, bigger the processes are. Even I remember after I closed the deal, the contract was signed. Just getting listed as a vendor so that payments can be made to you could be a month-long process, depending on the size of the organization. Again, a lot of due diligences because of being listed. So if you are listed, the due diligences will increase. Uh, if you're a small startup, probably one person can take the decision. If you're a bigger, let's say 10,000 CR company, let's say in the fast moving consumer goods business, while you may have the authority to take a decision, you'll still not want to take it without the approval of the board because tomorrow, uh, okay, so I don't know if I should use this word or not, but it's called save your behind syndrome, wherein tomorrow you do not want to be questioned by anyone that, hey, you took this decision but I made it with everyone's informed consent and see, I kept everyone informed. So even if it does go sour, then it was not my own fault. That is something which I've seen become the biggest problem as big the organization gets. Risk taking ability goes down. And that is something which becomes difficult to navigate. And that is where you need those internal champions. It becomes complicated for this very reason because you have to get so many people on board so that your own behind is safe and tomorrow you're not questioned that, hey, why did you take this decision?
And I'm taking a segue. Does having HR experience a good or is it necessary for selling, or I think it's someone just fresh off the bat can come and sell?
Again, this would be personal experience. No, I don't think it's necessary. Any, like all of the folks in my last organization, Darwinbox, none of them had an HR experience, barring one person, I think. And none of the successful people had any HR experience. Most of them from FMCG or BFSI or certain sectors. Not required.
But that's weird, right? I mean, wouldn't you intuitively think that if you came from this background, you know how these processes work? It's just easier to sell, or doesn't work that way.
I think it is easier to sell if you're not from that background because then you're not bogged down by all those small intricacies or nuances, and you do not tend to overthink. You tend to simplify problems and see what is the end impact it is going to have. And the operational parts of it, I think it took me 6 months to learn, 4 to 6 months to learn. That's it.
Would you think the same would be true for, like, let's say, finance, or is it only because it's HR?
No, in case of finance, it may not be true. Yes, in case of finance, I would feel you would need certain, experience where you might have done those things because then they become. See, if I put it, a lot of marketing or HR or sales is common business sense, which if you put your mind to it, you can understand it, you can learn your way through it. Finance, however, over time I've seen has become a bit too complicated. There are certain, standards you have to follow in terms of how you write things or report things, etc. Yeah, in case of finance, I think it would be different. And that is what my experience has been with most, hiring posts also. I've seen that most finance sales posts require a finance background.
Yeah, that's the thing about HR. Like, if while there are a lot of nuances and intricacies, I think anyone, if you just think from first principles and you
Yeah,
like
correct.
people, I think you can just figure things out. Interesting. Anyway, coming back to selling to HRs, see, the good thing now is this industry is, a lot of entrepreneurs are coming in trying to solve for people. Right, this has been typically that people have not paid so much attention to, so much innovation hasn't been happening, but now I think Darwinbox was one of those guys who paved the way for people to realize that tech is needed, right? I myself know many entrepreneurs who are building for HR ecosystem, right? But one of the things that people I've seen get wrong is they don't think of sales enough, right? When you're building a product, you're just solving a problem without really thinking from day one on how to eventually sell it, right? As someone who's done this for so long, what advice would you have from someone who's, let's say, building a product, a scrappy entrepreneur? How do they, should they even think of sales from day one? That's a bigger question. Second, if they do, like, how do you think how do you advise them to go about selling? And imagine this is, can be anything. It can be a large enterprise for HR. It can be a small sort of like a plug-in kind of tool for HRs also. Let's cover both.
Understood. See, on the first part of the question, should you be thinking about selling from day one? Yes, absolutely. Because if you're not making money out of it, then it's a hobby or a project, right? It's not a business tomorrow. You should be thinking about making money from it. Otherwise, why would you build it? You can do it in your free time. Secondly, see, two very important things when you want to start selling is, first of all, identify something which we call as ICP, or the ideal customer persona. Who is it that you want to sell to, right? Who would have that need that your product will solve? Who would then either buy it or sell it internally for the organization to buy? And second is, how do you reach that person? Uh, Finding the ICP is something which can happen different ways. You can talk to your friends, you can talk to your network, you can probably do. I think in the day and age of LinkedIn, it is fairly easy to find people with across whom you can bounce ideas. Right, people are more than happy to have initial discussions. Once you define that, and this is something which will get refined over time, right, as your product also gets refined over the months or the years. The second part about reaching out to these people is something which has become fairly easy with the advent of so many technologies. You have email campaigns, you have LinkedIn, you can build communities. The best way, however, I've seen is you start attending events which get that sort of people, right? Because at that time they're in a warm mood where they are willing to listen to, they're there to see what can solve their problems, right? So these are the two basics, Ranak. There's nothing beyond it, and other strategies you refine over time. You're finding the right buyer, and how do you reach that buyer? Again, thinking from first principles basis, that is all you need, and that is something you should get right or try to get right from the very beginning. Because changing that later means you might need to change a lot of your product also, which I wouldn't recommend.
But how do you sell? Like, in the sense, let's say I'm building something in recruitment, right?
Yeah.
Small sort of like a software which just automates. automates a bunch of things, right? You don't have an ATS, let's say. Now you're doing it manually. I'm building a script or something that automates the whole process of CV collection, putting it in one
Yeah.
place, a little bit of AI here and there. uh, how do I you're right, like I go, I look it on LinkedIn, I reach out to them, but how do I make that value prop, right, to my HR community buyers?
See, Ranak, there's no other way around it. You'll have to talk to people. You maybe talk to people who are doing that recruitment thing, who are facing those challenges, and that is only how you can make that value prop. Getting your first customer could be relying on your friends and family network or getting a foot in through a jugaad. The second customer or the third customer should always come in basis the referenceability of the first customer, who should get a good experience to vouch for you that, hey, I trusted Ranak, I blindly trusted Ranak, and the product at least gave me some positive outcome, and this is what I can vouch for. People, why do we look at reviews of hotels or things when we are buying on Amazon? We want that validation that, hey, someone has tried this and is happy with it. That's all you have to build after the first customer. In our job also, if you remember, we used to get so many reference calls done, right? That customer A has used this for 2 years, this is the experience, why don't you check with them? Only for the first customer you'll have to be lucky or get a foot in the door through some jugaad. That's where you start. Once you've started, I don't think there's any way. If your product is good, if you're giving the customer a good experience, then I don't think it's challenging to anyone.
Makes sense also. Like if you don't have money, I think ads a better uh,
Yeah.
sort of leverage on the people.
Ads is something I think once you've built it, it would come in at a very, very, very later stage. And ads are not effective also, right? Matlab, theek hai, they're good for making money for Google or Facebook, Meta. But I'll give you an example. In 2021, my father used to get so many ads of Darwinbox. And he's a doctor, right? It is not relevant to him for the simple reason that his son is in Darwinbox and somehow the profile, like, it is a waste of money. No, why should he see ads of Darwinbox? In especially in enterprise products and B2B products, referenceability, customer testimonials matter much, much more than an ad will do for you. A small case study will work wonders for you if you've done a fantastic job at a client.
Interesting. To summarize, think of think of sales from day one. Talk to people, understand the problem, and get one sale, and then use that again and again as sort
And
of.
understand who would be the right person to solve that problem for.
What do you mean by that?
The same ICP thing I said, right? You might be solving a problem, and if you pitch it to a C&B manager, you're solving a problem, and T8 is not relevant to him or her, right?
Acha,
He'll
okay.
probably think, ठीक है कुछ है मेरे काम का नहीं है. Whose next promotion or salary hike or job continuity will benefit if they use your product? Finding that person essentially.
Got it. So, in our parlance, let's say if you build a recruitment tech tool,
Yeah,
don't go and sell it to like the comp and ben manager or
correct.
someone who for absolute. And I'm saying at a very large scale
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
setup. Understood. Uh, okay. One question I was very curious on asking you, like you've seen the ecosystem evolve for the last 5, 6, I forgot how many years, right? And you've been in the heart of it, part of a company which has been instrumental in changing this. How have you? I know it's a very broad-based question, but how have you seen the whole HR tech landscape, right? How have you seen that change, and how have you seen the mindset of people also change accordingly?
Good question, Ranak. Interesting one. See, I've seen it evolve a lot, and I've seen it evolve a lot even from 2018, 19 till today. Most of the people back in 19 or pre-COVID were first-time buyers, especially of cloud-based HR tech solutions. They were experts in terms of how their ops things related to HR were supposed to be done, how they were supposed to be done with the help of technology. They were willing to take a bet. They were more trustworthy, I would say. Most of the people in today's data, second, third, or even fourth time buyers, they are not that trustworthy. A lot of them have been burnt by other players in the market. And again, you and I are aware of a lot of those names where, as I said in the beginning, right, don't make false promises that you cannot deliver. What that has done is it has bitten like those people who did those promises, it has affected the whole ecosystem also. However, it has also brought in a lot of maturity. People are more well read in terms of HR tech. They are more clear in terms of what their expectations are. They are aware that, see, HR tech is not it's not a magic Harry Potter's wand which will take away all of your worries and automate everything. They are more open to ideas. They are open to spending money where it gives them a good ROI. So that way I've seen it mature a lot. I'll just put it that way.
And also on the tech side,
Yeah,
how are you seeing it? So what I mean is, when we started, and when I say we, I mean back in Darwinbox, right? The first layer of tech was always HRMS, right?
yeah,
Like, just get a tool, right, which digitizes and
yeah,
automates some of the process. But now a lot of it is fragmenting, right? The specialized tools that's coming along.
yeah.
But from the end buyer, right? Because you interact with the HR community, HR buyers, how have their mindsets changed, and how are they open to these tools? Do they still say that no, I want one tool which does everything, or they're okay to take multiple tools and integrate it?
Understood. No, so see, if I were an HR and speaking to my people in the network, a single tool is always preferred, right? Because every new tool you add, you also have that learning curve. You have to teach your team how to use it. Things may or may not integrate so well. Reporting becomes a challenge. You have to amalgamate data from a lot of different places. What you're saying about specialization has happened, but see, there are certain areas where this specialization has helped. If I talk about let's say an ATS, a
Hmm.
specialized ATS on top of an HRMS, it is something definitely people are open to and they would love to take it. There are also tools I've seen in the market which would just do a small 1% task which the ATS does, which could be interview scheduling. Personally, I feel this is not a problem which should be solved by a specialized product. This is something where the time you spend on integrating and teaching your team how to use the product exceeds the benefit you reap out of it. Lesser tools you have, people prefer them all the same. And so, see, there are two things when you talk about tools, right? There could be breadth and there could be depth. When you talk about generalistic tools, you always have more breadth and less depth. The fragmentation or the specialized tools you get into add more depth. Now, how much depth you need, how much of time or money you're willing to sink in is something which I've seen being very subjective. But the general consensus, again, from HRs or even from their business budget approvers, CFOs, is lesser tools, the better. It becomes because it's not just buying them and maintaining, sorry, training them, right? Maintenance is also an issue. You pay recurring costs. If one of the tool goes down, your entire process could stop. So, lesser tools is what I've seen, is the general.
Makes sense. And also another thing is on data, right? Because the lesser tools you have, the more data is congruent.
Correct, 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 correct.
Yeah, but let's since that thought came about, I
Yeah.
was curious in asking you on analytics, right? Because, and it's not just because I was in people analytics. I've seen a rise in, like, how do I put it, love and understanding of data across organizations and also across HRs also. What's been your sense, like, on HR analytics, people analytics? Is it is it actually, first of all, on the rise at an enterprise and large scale levels, or it's just fluff? And are people really getting it? Are the HRs really getting what is HR analytics and what is it used for versus just something fancy on a piece of paper?
Uh, First of all, I would say it's not fluff because see, if you implement your solution properly and you have the sort of analytics you'd want, what is analytics? It is essentially like actionable insights, right? That you want. Analytics should be something which can make sense of some data, which otherwise would take you ages to make sense of. And I think yes, the maturity has risen in that regard. Also, it is not just fluff. People are making use of it. I've seen people making use of it in real time to make like proper business decisions. In terms of the HR tech side of it, I think the providers are also becoming more and more mature. They've understood that, see, if you're just providing a database or a workflow, while it will help make things more efficient or make operations more efficient, that is just not going to cut it. People's expectations have grown. They want those actionable insights, and that's where the market is getting at. And I think, yeah, we are at a reasonably mature level. Most mid-sized or large organizations are making use of some sort of analytics at the moment. A lot of them are also clubbing their employee-related analytics with their other business-related analytics to make even decision-making better, right? If I'm a leader at the top today, what am I being paid for? I'm being paid for making decisions, right? So if you make my life easier by giving me those inputs where I can make those decisions faster and more accurate, yes, I would love that. And that is what the industry is also seeking these days.
Hey, just double click little something interesting you said. You have people data and you have other business data. What use cases have you seen? People merging both?
I have seen, so this is one use case which would probably come to your mind also. It could be on the comp and ben side, right? After performance appraisals, wherein you want to see. which BU, which department, which division gets, especially in manufacturing companies where, quality of the things manufactured, or I think machine uptimes, downtimes in the factory lines matter. You're clubbing that data with employee related data, right? How's the overall BU or the division or even a specific plant functioning? Things like that is what I've seen essentially. Business metrics in terms of revenue or in terms of costs are being clubbed. So, for example, if Department A and Department B or the people under them are getting to a result of X, but Department A is doing it at, let's say, cost of Y, while Department B is doing it at zero point 0.9 of the cost, I should be rewarding the second department more. So, while I can always club that data even today, right, or even 10 years ago, I could do that, I had to do it manually. But people these days, in terms of the analytics, they are building their use cases where this data is available off the chart. You can use it as and when you want.
Just easier, faster, actionable insights, what you
Absolutely.
said. And what
Absolutely.
about cost? Like, because typically, at least in my time, I've seen cost always being an issue and cost being
Yeah.
questioned two, three, 10 times whenever an HR is buying something. Right
Yeah.
now, to do this, if I want a tool, I'll have to pay for it.
Yeah.
How are people? How are, let's say, execs looking at it? That what's the ROI that they are expecting for an analytics, or let's say a fancy HR tech tool?
Yeah. See, this I'll go back to one of like our earlier conversations like today itself. So ROI may or may not be quantifiable at all times, right? Sometimes it is very difficult to see the ROIs of something before you use it. That's where either you take that punt that hey, I'll try using it, see where it goes, or you go back to that referenceability part. You try to figure out what other people have done it, what other players in the market have done with that tool, and how it is being worked out for them. That is where also your HR should become your internal selling champion. That hey, right now we are at this stage. Right now we take 3 days to take these sort of decisions, and they are with this much accuracy. If we implement this, we can do it in 3 hours with this much accuracy. Those sort of conversations need to happen. But a lot of those times, again, you'll not know till you do it, right? Same as in terms of a career, right? So, and there are leaders of all sorts. Some leaders are open to those risks. In the bigger scheme of things, the cost of a fancy HR tech tool is also probably. So, I did this exercise with the CIO of a company where we had to convince the CEO of buying something. He looked at the expense of Darwinbox as a percentage of the total employee salaries they pay in a year. It turned out to be some 0.002% or something. I was like, इसको prove करने में आपको क्या problem? It's a rounding off error for you. Don't think of it in absolute numbers. So there are different ways of making your logic clear to people. And you could think depends on what the organization context is.
Yeah, that's a good use case actually. Looking at it as an overall percentage of
Yeah.
salary. I'll use that myself for any tool that I try to bring in. Cool. I have one question. I think a very broad-ended question for you. Let's say Vanshu, like you're figuring out what's next, right? And let's say the answer to that you come up is I want to start up. I want to start up, do my own startup, build something in HR. What would you do? It's just a brainstorming idea. What product or service would you do?
Okay, difficult question, not just broad ended. I've never given much thought to it. I
But sectorally, thematically, problem wise, what would you lean towards?
See, one thing which a lot of people talk about and are trying to do something about today is employee engagement, and this is something I've seen. And employee engagement is not just getting an ENPS survey done right once a quarter or once a year, and where a person says that I'm happy with my manager, I'm happy with my job, blah blah blah, all of that. How much are they engaged on a day to day level, right? And personally, if I say my engagement would stem from a few things, one would be I'm doing something which is slightly mentally challenging, so I can put my mind to it. My manager or my seniors in the company are supportive. They're not doing a lot of politics, etc. They're like actually looking to solve the problem we are doing together. I'm compensated fairly well enough for it. And the colleagues I interact with, the people I interact with, culturally or at least thought wise, some of them align with me, or I'll be more happy if all of them align with me. I'd probably build something on that lines where we could measure that probably by different, at different touch points, and then see what remedy you could provide as a HR leader to those folks. Now, people try to do this via surveys. However, the problem with surveys is once you go beyond 5, 8 questions, the survey fatigue sets in. I'll think that my answers should be in line with what the norm would be. I may not be that open to give up controversial, my internal feelings. I may be very pissed about something. I'll not probably put it on paper thinking that, hey, I might be reprimanded for it. how do you measure those actual internal feelings? And there could be multiple indirect ways of doing that, right? So whether I'm overworked, so you could take input from my attendance system and see that how many days. So back in my first job in Nestle, it used to happen that I think we used to get a mail once you had crossed 72 hours of time in an office in a week. The problem is measuring that is one thing and sending that mail is one thing. I used to hit 72 hours on a Thursday, where, or maybe on a, no, it was not 72 hours. I think it was 60 hours. It was not 72 hours. But the work demands were such that I couldn't do anything. ठीक है, you have sent that mail. What about it? I still have to finish that work. I still have to stay in office. So probably build something where you're hearing those things and you also have the, build for those people who actually have the intent to action on those things. That's probably something I would look at. Like what the biggest problem for me as an organization, it is losing employees who are ingrained in the culture, who know what to do, and then hiring new employees and training them, right? I'd rather solve that problem by keeping my employees engaged.
You'll be surprised. Like everybody acknowledges that that's a problem, but
Yeah.
people don't do anything about it.
Because running a tool cannot solve it, right? A tool can measure it. You should have that intent as a business leader to solve for it.
Yeah, I mean, push comes to shove, it's like, yeah, it's okay. We'll hire someone else. I've also not seen anybody really get that. Just pure math, right? That ROI of somebody leaving who's been in the system for a long time versus bringing somebody in. Forget just the cost and effort and the time to ramp that person up is crazy. When you put it in numbers, people don't believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting problem what you said. But wait, a lot of people have tried to solve it. People have got AI chatbots, but hasn't really been solved. Maybe it's an intent or mindset issue. But by the way, since I bring up, what about AI? Wouldn't you want to do something on AI for people?
I would just say I don't understand it well enough at this moment. Like, ठीक है, chat GPT, large language models, all of that is fine. I honestly do not understand it that much. Probably in a year or so, in a couple of years, when I have a better understanding, I might think about it. Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
But haven't you fielded questions? We said AI hai kya? Is AI integrated into
We
this?
have, and we had those answers also because we did have in the last 1 year we did build something on the lines of those AI things. But again, that was AI for bringing in operational efficiencies, right? You don't want to spend time writing a job description. Hey, the system will write it for you. It will do some automated screening for you. It will pick up some behavioral cues, etc. All that is fine. Again, that is, see, in my mind, AI shouldn't just be about workflow automation. That's why I said I don't understand enough about it. Workflow automation तो पहले भी हो रहा था, right? You're just doing it in maybe a more efficient, more less input requiring manner, but it is still workflow automation in my mind.
You're right. Fundamentally, nothing's changed. And I think the first
Yeah,
one should ideally be recruitment. I don't
I
think
agree as
anyone
well.
in the world has an answer, but it should start with recruitment because there's a lot of potential there. I mean, if you could just map a human brain somehow through AI, and then your whole screening goes away.
And to be honest, Ranak, I'm also sort of, again, I'm not getting the right word, but if you've seen the movie Terminator, right, when you talk about Skynet, I somehow have a feeling, and probably it would be a controversial answer, I do not see AI turning very well for humanity maybe in the next 70 to 100 years.
In the next how
I
many
don't
years?
know. Sorry?
How many years?
70, 100 years, maybe 50 years. I'm just happy that it will be after my time, after I'm gone, but I do not see it turning out very well for humans. See, if you get something to be at a sentient level, whether it's artificial or natural, how will it matter, right? A brain is a brain. In the
But
end, like
that's
this
the
is slightly
point,
getting
right?
into philosophy. You and I are made of stardust, right? Some explosion which happened some millions, billions of years ago. Those atoms combined, ठीक है, fine, a body was made, a brain was made, life evolved, right? Even if it evolves artificially and it can think for itself and it sees you as a threat tomorrow, it will be a problem.
But that's the whole
That's what
point,
I
right?
feel.
You don't want it to be sentient. Like you have to
Correct.
get it to a level that it's not sentient. But
The problem is you and I don't control that, right? A researcher who's enthusiastic for his or her project may want to see what boundaries can I push my product till, right? And those boundaries may not be the best for everyone else.
I was having this interesting discussion. I think on my first podcast with Chatok, and I've spoken to a lot
Yeah.
of people that I'm damn sure we are going to be around to see where there's going to be AI, let's say robots, right, in the workforce. It's going to happen. It's already started happening a little bit. This
Yeah.
guy's building, that Brent Addock, he's building a startup where just robots that will automate like an Amazon warehouses, right?
Yeah.
And they can think for themselves in the sense, not just being told what to do. You're going to have HR policies for robots, where you'll have a bunch of policies, and you need that, right? You can't even overwork a robot because it'll break down. I think it'll start with that, but I mean, that's a long way off. I'm more, I would say, curiously excited in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, where we don't get to robots, but we get to AI really solving some of people related problems. And at least I'm hopeful that people, at least our HR function is looking at it.
Correct.
Unlike 10, 15 years back when we were the laggards, at least some people are really thinking, and there would be use cases. Let's see. Like I said, recruitment probably should be the next one.
Yeah.
If you can somehow just automate screening. Let's see. Cool, Himanshu. It was very interesting and great talking to you. Any closing thoughts for those who are listening in?
No, Ranang, I think this was a very interesting conversation. In fact, you have given me food for thought, a lot of food for thought. I'll also think about a lot of things. I had never thought about, it's like I'm not one of those people who has planned that, hey, I'll build something in the future of my own and then do it. But now when you say it, like, no, I'm thinking about it. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you on that. But thank you for your time on a Sunday, early Sunday morning. And thank you for all those great questions. I hope uh, this gives clarity to whosoever listens to this podcast later on. And yeah, that's that.
Yeah, and I think you are open on LinkedIn, so you want to share that if somebody wants to reach out to you.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't know that when I put a post that I'm taking a break, that it would sort of explode so much. I got at least, I think, 150 messages beyond that. I've spoken to close to 90 people in the last 1 month, and I've given time to rest of the people to speak this month. Like, just happy to help.
Cool, cool. Thank you for coming on,
Yes.
Himanshu. It was great catching up.
You too,
Thank you.
Ranak. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.